Thank you for joining us in our final wrap up for the 2-day Amplify event put on by the GenNext team. We're so excited to have you guys here on this beautiful sunny day. As you can see, I'm not outside. I wish I was, but happy to have you guys all here. If you've attended any of the events over the last 2 days, whether it was our happy hour last night or you're attending for the first time tonight, I hope you really got into some of the content that we provided in the last 2 days, some incredibly fantastic sessions with some knowledge. There's always that moment where you get those 1 or 2 takeaways, and we're going to get some more takeaways tonight, I hope. So glad to have everybody here. My name's Kate. I'm the Director of Marketing for United Way, East Ontario, and this afternoon I have the pleasure of being your host. I know you've all been to your fair share of Zoom meetings. And we've all had a few this year for sure, but this one's going to be fun, I promise. So you'll be able to sit back, relax, and put your cameras on and enjoy. So just some housekeeping notes. If you have a comment or would like to ask a question, please chat along, raise your hand, just indicate that you want to interact, and we'll make sure that our moderators grab your question, grab your comment, and relay that to the group that's on the call. If you have any questions for Pat, who's our special guest from Dominion City, please feel free to drop them in the chat at any point during the beer sampling, and we'll get to them during the Q&A, or just ask as you go. I think we're going to have a pretty free-flowing event this evening. We encourage you to turn on your video. We'd love to see everybody. It's been way too long that we've seen everybody, so please make sure you participate. And though we can't mix and mingle like we used to, we certainly can try our best here tonight over Zoom. Before we get things started, let us take a moment to truly appreciate how privileged we are to be here. We at United Way, East Ontario, acknowledge that our offices are located in the Ottawa region, on the unceded, unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe Algonquin Nation, whose presence here reaches back to time immemorial. Each and every day, we are grateful to live, work, and play on this land. For those who attended a GenNext Mix and Mingle or a Smooze Fest in the past, we hope you find some semblance of that this afternoon in this session. We've included your favorite drink sponsors and an opportunity to network and mingle with each other. Amplify is a celebration of our recent launch of GenNext East Ontario, now working with communities in Prescott, Russell, Ottawa, Lanark, Renfrew counties. It's been an incredible year for our organization. We're so appreciative for all the support we get from our sponsors like Dominion City, as well as our partners. And just, it's been incredible how our community has banded together in the past year. We feel extremely fortunate to be able to work in this region. If you want to learn more about what's changed with GenNext, make sure you check out the website. It's gennexteo.ca. It's an incredibly informative website. I think you're going to find a lot of knowledge, as well as things that are shared during the last 2 days. You're going to find a reflection of the sessions and the information on our website as well. So that's gennexteo.ca. And while you're there, make sure you don't forget to sign up for our newsletter. It's a great resource for you to get every 2 months into your inbox. Gives you a ton of information about what's going on, as well as some information about upcoming events. So finally, we're a charitable organization. We continue to support our most vulnerable in our communities through the pandemic and beyond. The work has been incredible. The amount of support we've received from our community has been overwhelming, and we continue to do the work because we are fueled by the stories and the people who still need our help. As everybody has been hit by the pandemic, so has the charitable sector. Even more so, it's more important than ever. If you're able to support GenNext EO and provide a donation and give a gift, we would very much appreciate it. For those who have already shown their support through buying a ticket for this event, we so appreciate it. And we look forward to doing more and more work in our community and representing GenNext. So here we go. Are you ready to have some fun? Who doesn't enjoy having a couple of beers? Now, I will admit I am not having a beer, but I've been saving this one. So it's a citrus tonic. So I'm keeping it. I still have to do a few things tonight, so I wanted to keep it on the level. But I'm enjoying some great seltzers from Dominion City. I love the packaging. I saved this one for myself. So if you've been able to be at a GenNext event before, you know it wouldn't be complete without Dominion City. If they're not there, it's not a GenNext event. We're so glad to have Pat here from Dominion City with us for a special beer sampling. We hope you all were able to buy a sample pack, and so you can taste along with us. Founded with a mission to craft quality artisanal beer, emphasizing a connection with the land and the people who make it possible, Dominion City opened its doors in 2014. Over the last 7 years, Dominion City has earned a reputation for brewing quality beer, operating as a caring and contributing member of their community, and a leading voice in Ontario's craft beer community. Pre-pandemic, Pat served as the events manager at Dominion City, but since the beginning of the pandemic, his role has changed a lot. On top of still having a hand in events, Pat is also managing delivery logistics for Dominion City home delivery service, as well as contributing to the quality control team at the brewery. Much like all of us, he really misses in-person events and sharing beers with friends and customers at the brewery. From a United Way GenNext perspective, we can't say enough about their ongoing support during this challenging time. From working with and supporting local businesses to fundraising for charities within the community, Dominion City is creating positive 100% local change. Everyone, please help me welcome Pat with an applause or some other Zoom reaction, and don't be shy to sound off in the chat. If you have any questions about Dominion City and brewing beer in general, this is an opportunity to ask Pat all about the company, products, and any other questions you might have all throughout our chat function. All right, Pat, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you so much, Kate. Thank you, Caroline, Kate, and Candace. Thank you, everyone, for having me here today. Yeah, that was quite the introduction. I look forward to answering any questions you have. Before we really get started in things, those of you who did buy a sample pack, I'm going to go over just a couple of them with you guys. I don't know if there's a preference for which one we want to start with, but I was going to be starting with Time and Tide, which is our new hoppy lager, which is a real treat if anyone's ever had it. So I'm going to start by pouring this into a glass, taking a look at it, taking a smell at it, and then we can kind of dive into what Dominion City is and who we are and what we do. Nice, pretty aggressive pour. So I like to pour my beers nice and aggressive. You got to let out that carbonation. You got to let the bubbles kind of release so you can really truly enjoy your beer and all the flavors inside of it without getting all gassy and burpy about it. I'm gonna stick our nose in it. I got my sense of smell back, so that's great. Oh yeah. This is like my favorite thing to drink on days like today. Beautiful 20-degree, what I would consider late spring, summer days. Nice, refreshing, light, low ABV lagers that really just refresh you. Oh man, that's great. I guess, how do we get started in this? I guess a little bit about myself. My name is Pat. I have been the events manager at Dominion City for, I guess, going on 2 years now. After Kate said 7 years, I totally kind of ignored last year as counting as one of our years in our age. So 7 years, that's pretty great for us right now. But I've been there for 2 years, just over 2 years now. It's been pretty amazing. I started off just working in a tap room because I got hired when I was still I went back to university a couple years ago. And I went from the tap room to kind of just working my way around events because I come from a background in events and brewery management at a couple of breweries in Toronto. But coming back here, I didn't really know whether or not I wanted to continue in the beer industry. And the only brewery that I ever saw myself potentially working with was Dominion City. When they came and asked me to join their team, I saw it as a sign to just keep on with my little trajectory in beer. And it's been really fun. And they've really been an incredible place to work and really hone my skills as not only as an event manager, but as just a beer professional. As Kate mentioned, I went from being an events manager, which I really loved doing, to pretty much having my entire job flipped on its head overnight last March, and events becoming a thing of the past, as we can see from our our Zoom event that we're currently sharing right now. But it forced us to really pivot and try to fix and adapt to the new landscape. So that brought in an opening in establishing a delivery system through our brewery with our staff. We all kind of like stepped up and brought in our own cars. We even bought another car for the brewery to kind of make things a little bit easier. And I coordinate all of that. And then on top of that as well, my background in beer is in a sensory analysis point of view. So I do a lot of sensory analysis of the brewery. Any of the beers that go out, any of the beers that are made, go through my panel of people. We make sure that everything has the seal of approval, making sure that we live up to our slogan on the side of the can, maker of very good beer. We make sure that all the beers that go out of the brewery do represent that properly. That's right. Exactly. Just like that class. So that's kind of my newest role, my new role now. It's something that I really, really enjoy. I really love the quality control aspect of the brewery. I love the more technical aspect of the brewery. And I'm really kind of finding that to be the most fulfilling part of it. A little bit of background on Dominion City itself. We started with kind of a really simple goal of just making great beer and really providing Ottawa with somewhere local that can make you proud of the products that come out of the city. Andrew and Josh, when they started, they kind of shifted away from their regular 9 to 5. They had a really, Andrew called Josh one day after a really bad day and just said, "This is it. We gotta start something for ourselves." And not a ton of experience in beer, but they knew there was a void for good quality beer in the city, so they really wanted to make it work. And they just kind of went from there, and they started making some test batches in their backyard, and then eventually having enough financial backing to open their own place. And things really started moving forward when they brought on Scotty, our head brewer, which he is still currently employed there as our head brewer, and really started bringing attention to detail to all of our recipes and to all of our beers and to everything that we put out of the brewery. And then ever since then, it's just kind of been a fast moving train forward, just making as good of beers as possible while without compromising on the quality of ingredients, without compromising on hiring good people to get the work done. It's just a place that we just really truly believe in quality in all sense of the word. I think you can tell by the beers that we put out, and I think you can tell by the way that our staff behaves around town and how happy we are to work there. And I think it's just very very obvious that I think we're succeeding in that goal so far. Outside of that, I guess I don't know if you want to add, if anyone has any questions so far. I'm kind of just like cruising through this a little bit. Has anyone dived into their beer? Anyone have any thoughts on their beer so far?
Can I ask, Pat? I ordered as part of the sample pack I can't remember the title of it. There was a beer that got like Hawaiian flavors in it, coconut.
Oh, is it the Southern Migration IPA?
Can you tell me a bit about that? I haven't opened it. I haven't drunk it. Tell me a bit about that beer.
Yeah, that's one of our crazy ones that we put out a couple weeks ago. Basically, during the winter, we decided to kind of do a fun take on just a regular IPA. Those of you who know our IPAs know that we make very citrus forward, very hazy, delicious, creamy IPAs. But we decided we wanted to make something a little different, so we created this brand called Southern Migration. The first iteration of the new kind of Southern Migration was in January. We did a blueberry and clementine IPA, which was really, really tasty. But then we just released I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago now, our new Pina Colada IPA, which is coconut, pineapple, and vanilla. And it just pretty much creates this basically a cocktail of a beer. You get a ton of vanilla, you get a ton of coconut, you get a ton of pineapple. And yeah, it makes for it pretty much transports you into thinking that you're sitting on a beach when we released it. It was a few weeks ago, so it was still pretty cold outside. There's a link right there. Yeah, thank you, Olga. Yeah, it's my mom was drinking it the other day too. She had to call me. She's like, "What is this? This is crazy." Yeah, and it's a 7% beer, so you gotta watch out a little bit. It sneaks up on you. I don't drink the 7%ers that much, but that one was pretty tasty. What do we have? The van drives by my house almost every day. Yeah, we're on the road a lot. We do since the beginning of the pandemic, we we've been averaging somewhere in the realm of 135 deliveries a day, 5 days a week, 5 drivers on the road on the busiest of days. So it's three drivers during the day, 2 drivers at night. And that has made it even at that amount of scheduling, is still pretty difficult to keep up. So it's definitely been a challenge, an ongoing challenge that we're constantly trying to optimize and make more efficient. And I think it's at doing pretty well. I think people are getting their beers pretty quickly. And I think for the most part, people seem to be pretty happy with it. So make sure you wave if you ever see anyone driving around in the Leaf or in the 2 vans that we have going around. Sometimes it's me. Sometimes we got 5 other people that are doing it, but I try to be on the road a lot less so I can focus on this stuff and planning the routes, but every once in a while I'm on there. I never want to go back to picking up my own beer. Well, I think it's been pretty fun doing the delivery thing. I think it's been really appreciated from people as well. I think we were the first brewery in Ontario to pivot overnight to having our drive-through pickup and then having our at-home delivery. If anyone's been by the brewery at all since this whole pandemic started, you'll see that the taps has been closed and it remaining closed until May. But it's been closed and kind of been transitioned into this kind of fulfillment center. And it's just it's crazy how much we just like filled the whole tap room with just boxes and shipping and receiving items, and like it's a whole new place now. And we're going to be doing a few renovations to the brewery over the next couple of months, so that we're going to be hopefully opened our new patio and tap room for social distance gatherings as of May. I think that's our next plan. We're taking out the windows of the front of the brewery and we're putting a big garage door, so that'll be fun. I guess another point I'd love to touch on, just for giving a bit more light on Dominion City, and I'm sure I'm talking to people who know very well about who we are and what we do. But one of the things that we always find, or something that we consider very, very important, is our place in the community. And one of those people or one of those organizations that we always love supporting has been United Way for that reason exactly. Is they are just so pivotal in community outreach and making sure that everything, or helping people in the community stay connected. And it's something that we absolutely value more than anything. We try to give back to as many organizations we possibly can, especially the ones in our region, the ones are near the brewery. We are constantly giving back to the Gloucester Emergency Food Cupboard, who have been very close partners of ours since the beginning. Over the last year, I think we've raised $115,000 for charities around the city through our just the ability of donating through checkout. So at the end of online, if you go through our website and you buy some beer, no matter what beer you buy, you'll be prompted if you would like to donate $1, $10, however amount of money you want to donate per purchase to a local charity that we're highlighting every month. And yeah, it's been amazing just to see people giving back and us being able to facilitate that. And yeah, I think it is probably the biggest part, and one of the reasons why I love the craft beer industry so much is that we should be something hyper local, and in that area of hyper locality, it's highlighting the people within those communities. So you shouldn't be a craft brewery in a community if you're not connected to the community that you're serving that craft product in. And I think Dominion City has been doing a really great job of living up to that mentality. Something that's brought me closer to the craft beer industry since the day that I discovered it. It's a sense of community. It is a community, and community goes further than than just beer. It's everything that brings us together, right? So yeah, I think that's a pretty good explanation of what Dominion City is and what we do, and why we love doing what we do so much.
I just want to thank you for having that option in the checkout to donate, because like I automatically just do that every time. It seems like it's a different charity every time I do a mass order of beer. But otherwise I never would be donating to these charities. And I feel like I was I've been mentioning this to people who are around me, that I feel like during COVID, it just hasn't been that visible. Like we're so enclosed in our own little houses, and we're not really thinking about that many other people and our community as a whole. So I feel like that's a really important aspect, and it's really encouraged me to think about like, oh, I should be donating to these local charities. Like I still have a job, I'm able to work, I have the means to do it, and I feel like that's a super easy way to do that. So yeah, thanks for facilitating that, because I feel like a lot of other places that I've been ordering, you know, local goods from, like nobody else I've really noticed has been doing that, and I really like how you guys have done it.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think I'm not alone in feeling that it can feel a little overwhelming, because there are so many organizations out there, so many great organizations out there that do deserve our money and do deserve our support. And we try to do our best to highlight a variety of different organizations. So we try to cover the gambit as far as like, I know a few months ago, we had Gambit, which is a organization that helps newly settled refugees with prepared meals, and they were unbelievable. And it's just kind of like covering the gambit of different organizations, different groups, different people, to make sure that we try our best to really include as many people as possible in our customers are so generous with their money. So if we can help them, you know, find new people to donate to, or find new organizations that work within our community, yeah, it's kind of just makes it all worth it.
I was just going to say too, what's awesome about Dominion City and the thought and the care that's put into how you want to connect to your community. You know, you sort of have this, I'll call it quality control in also who's being presented to you to give. Like there's thought put in, there's an attachment there. It's a really, I think it's more important than ever. I mean, a lot of us on this call are in marketing or in communications. Is the overt part of marketing and communications is over. It's that trust and accountability and transparency through partnerships. I think partnerships is such a huge opportunity to build that local feel, which is amazing.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, I know that a few people, Pat, bought the sample kits. So I know you don't want to talk absorbently about beer, but we definitely want to know about what's in that sample pack and what's unique about
I love talking
beer.
about beer. I love talking about beer. I love talking about it as much as possible. I can talk about all this stuff. The sample pack, the way that I had structured it as far as like how I would do the sampling, if you were to do a full sampling today, the first one I would have started with was the one that I did start with, the Time and Tide Hoppy Lager. Has anyone been drinking that at all while I've been drinking this, or am I drinking this alone right now? Cool. It's really good for when you do get to it. It's extremely refreshing and delicious. Next up would have been this one, the Shape of Home, which is one of our newest releases. It's an all local pale ale, low ABV pale ale, featuring local flour malted barley from Barn Owl Malt in Belleville, hops from around Lake Huron, and basically just creates this beautiful, fluffy, aromatic pale ale that is just super tasty and kind of aligns itself very well with the kind of flavorful citrus forward IPAs that you would expect from us. But at a 4.5%, which makes it just, in my opinion, a lot better because you can have it comfortably, not worry about not being able to drive home after. And it's also full of flavor, which is amazing. And then from there, we have our beautiful Sunsplit, which I'm sure everyone's familiar with at this point. This is our absolute best-selling beer, one of my absolute favorite beers. It's one of the reasons why I even know about Dominion City at this point, or before I started working there, because I didn't know anyone else in Ontario was making beers like this. New England style IPAs, big citrus notes, huge citrus notes. That pretty much just like makes you feel like you're drinking like peach juice, which is so good. We've spent time over the last few years really honing in this recipe, and I think it's pretty much solidified itself as probably one of the best hazy IPAs in the province. I'm going to say confidently. If anyone has anything you want to add to that, please go ahead. But yeah, it is my absolute favorite. And then at the very end of it, wrapping up with the big guy at the end, Lost Train Oatmeal Stout. This oatmeal stout is one of our long-standing seasonal beers. We've been making it for a few years now. The name refers back to the lost beer train from the Brading's Brewery that used to be found up on Wellington in the early 1900s, late 1800s. The rumor that they, during Prohibition, had a train that went underneath the city and delivered beer with it. Pretty interesting little story if you have time to go check it out. But this beer definitely has its place at the end of a tasting because of its huge toasty notes, roasty, toasty, nutty, molasses, kind of light smokiness to it, and a pretty strong bitterness to kind of finish it all off. But yeah, also a pretty special beer. We don't do a ton of stouts, lighter stouts. We do a few a year. Lately, we've been doing a lot of very, very big stouts, big pastry stouts. Another one coming out soon. Hot tip, we have a chocolate mint pastry stout coming out in the next couple of weeks, which is a pretty special one. I think you're the first people to hear about that. All I've been smelling is mint around the brewery for the last week and a half. So it's been pretty interesting, and it's causing my brain to explode. I've never ever had a mint chocolate stout, so it's pretty special. I'm gonna open this guy up if anyone wants to partake.
That's the one I'm enjoying.
Yeah, what do you think, Caroline?
It is delicious. It is citrusy. Can't remember the name of the beer it reminds me of. It does remind me of another beer.
Trying to think of the other. We did another session IPA that came out last year that was in a teal can as well, and I can't think of the name. We do, like, most of our business is seasonal beers. We almost do everything. Like, we have 5 beers that are full time, and then everything else is a new name all the time, and it's very hard to keep up. I don't remember all the beers that we put out. I'll probably forget these beers as far as their names go in the next couple of weeks, because I'll have 12 other new beers that I need to remember. But yeah, it's ooh, that's pretty. Oh, it smells good. What was I saying? Oh yeah, we're a seasonal brewery.
So Pat, do you have a favorite beer? Like, are you allowed to have one, or?
Oh yeah. As far as beers from Dominion City goes,
Yeah.
probably my go-to absolute, like, number one is Paper Salesman, which is kind of our quarterly release pale ale. It kind of tastes like fuzzy peaches, or like tangerines and fuzzy peaches, and it's just so good, so refreshing. It's pretty much, you get all of those big citrus notes that you'd expect from a full-bodied New England style IPA, but it's in a 5% pale ale, and it's unbelievable. For those of you who haven't tried it, if you manage to get your hands on some next time it's released, I think you'll really enjoy it. But usually it sells out within a day or two, which is, yeah, we never release it that much. I think we release it 4 times a year, 3 or 4 times a year. And yeah, it goes very, very quickly. That's probably my number one from the brewery. Outside of that, we've really placed a big importance on lagers over the last little while, especially in the last year. Lagers are all of our favorite styles. There's nothing we like more after a long day at the brewery than to drink something on the lighter end of the spectrum. That's really refreshing and just kind of like thirst quenching without being high ABV, so you can kind of just like get on with your day and just kind of take a pause and relax. But on the other side of that, lagers are kind of it's the way that brewers show how good they've become at brewing beer. Lagers, you can't hide anything behind them, right? You can't hide off flavors behind huge hop aromas, huge hop flavors, toasted malts, or anything more on the any adjunct flavors. You're basically showcasing the grain, you're showcasing your skills as a brewer, and really putting it at the forefront. If anything is wrong with it, you'll be able to tell right away. And it's really our favorite thing to show that we are good at what we do. We can make these incredibly simple tasting, yet extremely complex beers, and do them very well. And we've really wanted to showcase that a lot lately. So we've invested in new lagering tanks at the brewery. We have more full-time lagers available. I think we'll always have a lager, or at least 1 or 2 lagers available all the time from now on. And they're always going to be good, really good, and really delicious. It's easier for me as like a sensory analysis to really pick it apart and make sure that it's the best beer that it can possibly be. So it's really fun. What do we got going on here? We got pistachio imperial stout. Oh yeah, small. That was really good. That was a crazy one. It was so fun. Oh, my cat's sneezing up a storm here. We have TM and chocolate mint. No. Oh, I don't know. Maybe it's gonna be mint chocolate. I don't know. Marmalade. That's a good question. I don't know. We only do Earl Grey a couple of times a year, maybe once a year. We've played with the recipe a bunch to make it something that we all like to drink a lot more. I was never a big fan of it personally, but I know there's definitely some huge Dominion City diehards that are really, really big fans of Earl Grey marmalade. So we keep it around, and we've made it. I think we've made it a lot better over the last little while, but I don't know when it's coming back. Anyone have any other questions at all?
I think someone dropped this in the chat about if you win a prize, if you think of the winning name for a beer, what's the process behind coming up with those names?
Oh, that's a good question. It's kind of two things. The first thing is depends who's brewing the beer on the brew team. If it's somebody who's kind of like getting their first crack at like being the lead brewer on a specific brew, they'll get the opportunity to name it if they had something really in mind that they wanted to name. I know Jacinda, one of our brewers, really stepped up over the last year and has been more at the forefront of brewing. She came up with a couple of really great beers last year. I don't know if anyone's tried Side Pony, the lime zest IPA that came out last year. That was her creation and her name for it. She's a real 90s girl, so she really like went straight for it. So it depends on that, but on the other flip side of things, it's Josh, one of our owners, has a big hand in naming the beers, and it depends on what he's feeling and reading. Lately, a lot of our newer beers have things related to philosophy, mostly our relationship with time, and it's kind of just, I'll actually pull up what he texted me about it earlier, but he just had his second kid, so he's definitely feeling a lot more philosophical these days, really thinking about all these things a lot more. He says Time and Tide is the latest riff on a theme about time, and just kind of captures the idea of relentlessness, the relentlessness of time, and how we're kind of subjected to it no matter what. And yeah, so he can go on about these things a lot, and they've been pretty good. Sometimes they can be a bit of a mouthful. I know we named a double IPA a few months ago called Kindly Indifference to Infinity. A lot of people were very intrigued by that name, but it's been fun. He has a lot of fun with it. We're all like big music fans too, so a lot of them will be nods to a Bruce Cockburn song or a Mountain Goats song, or anything else in that kind of realm. So that's kind of where the naming of the beers come from. I guess on the third point for that, those of you who are familiar with any Canadian history at all can definitely see that our brewery has its roots kind of anchored in Canadiana and Canadian iconography. So there's no doubt that we all kind of like want to take a nod to Canadian heritage and Canadian history by naming some of our beers related to things in Canada or things related to Canada. We've done the Champlain Supernova sour beer we did a few years ago. Our Alouette IPA, Galaxy IPA, which is a nod to the first Canadian satellite in space. We have a whole line of beers that are a nod to Canadian parliamentary procedures. Josh is formerly a lobbyist for the government of Canada, so so there's definitely a nod to his previous life there. I did a bachelor in history and political science, so we all kind of like are a bunch of like history and politics nerds deep down as well. So it's it is pretty personal. We're definitely all kind of put a little bit of ourselves into it. We kind of just feel it out. It really depends on what we're feeling.
Love that. I always wanted to know.
Yeah, no, it's a common question that we get.
Yeah, I'm catching up on the chat here too. I'm scrolling up. So there's some questions around the Friends of Dominion. And do you have any other craft companies that you want to shout out?
Oh man.
Maybe tell us a little bit about the background on that too.
Sure. I guess the Friends of Dominion came when the AGCO started allowing restaurants to sell off sales of beer and wine. And we are technically licensed as a restaurant at the brewery. So we figured this would be a great opportunity to highlight some of our friends that we've brewed alongside and some of the breweries that we've worked alongside over the years. And, you know, try to fill up some of those dried up revenue streams. Like we can use our online store and our reach within our community to, you know, we can purchase like a pallet of beer from these people and sell it ourselves so that they can still have sales. They can still fill the void of loss of licensee sales and at the same time highlight our friends that are making really great beer. And I think it's been pretty successful. We decided to use the Friends of Dominion to only highlight Ontario wines and Ontario beers. There are laws restricting us from selling some beers from outside of province, but if they were through an importer, it would work. But we just wanted to make sure that it was as close to home as possible and as close to local ingredients as possible, kind of reflecting our own core values to beer, to brewing and beer making. And yeah, it's been great. I think like since this whole thing started, I think I've maybe drunk like 2 or 3 bottles that are not from Ontario in the last year because I've had access to such amazing Ontario wines that we aren't even noticing a drop in quality whatsoever. We're seeing some of the greatest wineries as far as I've ever tried put out some incredible products. Just off the top of my head, we've had amazing stuff from Fourth Wall Wines, Therianthropy Wines, Red Tail Vineyards in Beamsville. Yeah, just like that's just to name a couple of wineries. As far as breweries go, man, we've had such great luck to work with some amazing breweries. I've myself have worked for a few in Toronto that I've continued that relationship, and we've done a couple collaborations with. Bellwoods is one of them recently, but we just released a nice collab with that sold out extremely fast, but they've been friends of ours for a long time. Left Field Brewery in Toronto, Reinhard Brewery in Toronto, where I used to be the GM for. We've been selling their beer as well, which has been really cool. We basically recently partnered up with the Wood Brothers, which do some pretty limited small batch releases out of like, they're right at the border of Quebec, I think. I don't really remember where it is, but it's very rural, very weird little place. But yeah, it's been super fun, super cool. I don't know if anyone's tried our recent collaboration with Fairweather Brewing out of Hamilton that we put out called Until Then Gosa. But it's probably my favorite sour I've had in a long time. Probably the best sour we've ever made. I think there's still some available, but it's incredibly good. Yeah, it's been such a cool thing. I love that it's finally something we know we've been sitting in kind of like a dark ages of alcohol laws in Ontario, where we see like, you know, BC, you can do off sales, Alberta, you can do off sales, Quebec, you can do off sales. And all of a sudden we're finally able to do it. And it's been, you know, nothing but positives. I think we still need wineries and restaurants to have access to wholesale prices, but outside of that, it's been pretty positive, pretty great. Did not know that's how you pronounce ghost. Yeah, it's the German word Gosa. It comes from it's a river in Germany where they used to use the water from. The Gosa River. It was a highly salinated river that they would use to brew the beer, so you'd have a nice touch of salt to your nice light sour. One of my favorite styles by a long shot.
Now I know not to say, can I have the ghosts, please?
It's very common. A lot of people do it. It's something that I like using it as a trivia point just because it's so common. There's a lot of weird words, especially once you start getting into parts of Germany, parts of Belgium, things that are mostly Flemish or French or Slavic words that just kind of get butchered in English, which is totally fine. But yeah, it's a lot of that stuff in beer. There's such a rich history in brewing that, you know, it just makes sense that it would happen.
Elise asked a question. She said, well, she emphasized no pressure, but she wanted to know if you had And obviously you spoke about a female brewer at Dominion City, but do you have sort of a perspective on that and if it's growing and women in the brewing industry in general?
That's a really great question. It is growing. I'm happy to see that it is growing. I'm not happy to see that it's not growing as fast as I personally would want it to be growing. There's still that stigma of it being a boys' club, as much as we all do our best at the brewery to try and change that as much as humanly possible. It's just it's just something that I think is still very strong in the kind of perception of the industry that, and I think, it's unfortunately been shown by some bad, like some of the worser parts of the industry that, it's still tough to be a woman in the industry. And we want to make sure that that's not a thing that continues going on. We've done our absolute best to ensure that we can try to encourage more diversity in the industry. We've partnered up with Ren Navarro in Toronto, who runs an organization called Beer Diversity. And with her, we've established a scholarship at the Niagara Brewing School to give $1,000 per year for a student that falls under that criteria. So a person of color, female, or anyone that's underrepresented in the beer industry, and give them $1,000 and a paid internship at our brewery once their studies are done. And we had our first intern last year, Natalie, who was amazing, and she is back in Hamilton now working for another brewery, I believe. But yeah, it takes some work, but I mean there's a lot of breweries that are doing really great work at this. But I'm hoping it changes a lot more. I really hope to see more women in brewing, especially on the brewing side, not just on the service side. It doesn't have to be boys' club back there. It's changing, hopefully a lot faster. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Left Field Brewing in Toronto, but their spot's another spot that's been pushing that very far. Bellwoods has been doing a great job of that as well. Female owned and operated, and just like a shining example of the kind of brewery that everyone should aspire to be. They're really great.
I think we have a question in there about the technical background of having to work at a brewery. Do you have sort of a mix of people who are, went to school for it and some that don't, or sort of like how do you get into the field?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It depends on what part of the brewery you want to work for. If you're working in the brewing part, in the back of house, if you have no experience, there is still a place for you there if you want to get into it. It's just you have to work a little bit harder at the bottom. Cellaring positions, keg cleaning, things like that, where it's just like everyone does, but it's definitely more reserved for people who are not on the brewing team. But it's a good way to have a view of every single step of the brewing process and that aspect of things, just like a dishwasher in the kitchen, just like a line cook in the kitchen. It has the same kind of structure. And you kind of work your way through that. You can work just by doing that and work your way up by learning, by doing. Or you can go to places like Niagara College, who have a full-on beer and brewing and distilling program where you can learn the fundamentals and then jump into a brew team and see how things go from there. When it comes to the front of house things that my experience comes from, I come from the restaurant world. I worked in restaurants for 15 years, going into beer, and it's definitely lent itself really helpful in the beer industry because you work so closely with restaurants, and that type of work is it's very interchangeable. But outside of that, it's like a lot of people just we work for small businesses, so we're a lot of people who wear a lot of hats all the time. If you have a varying a lot of like array of skills, it can be applicable and can be used in some way. There's not really I didn't go to school for anything in this, and I just kind of like worked my way up through different jobs within beer. I think I've done, without being a brewer, I've done every job in a brewery, from canning line to, I've cleaned kegs. I've, been a server. I've been a restaurant manager. I've been the marketing manager. I'm a social media manager, everything. So if you want a job that can kind of make you do a bunch of different things and you having no previous experience for it, it's pretty much that's the industry here. Obviously, having education is great. It can definitely be helpful. If you go to school for marketing, you can probably be really helpful to a brewery in marketing, but it's not required to get involved or to get into a brewery. It usually takes with getting in to a simple job and then showing that you have value somewhere else. And it's kind of like, anytime I've ever talked to somebody about getting in with a brewery, I'm like, look if they're hiring in the tap room. Look if they're hiring as a delivery driver. Look if they're hiring for a cellar person. Cellar people is somebody who, moves grain around, somebody who puts kegs away, cleans kegs, things like that. Look for those positions. When you get in those positions, things change often in a brewery. Breweries are always in a constant period of growth, and things are always changing. So if you have your eye on a different type of position, if you start in the tap room and say, I don't know, I kind of want to do events more. Oh, I don't know, I kind of want to do, maybe I want to do brewing. At least you'll have that dialogue open with the owners or with the brewmaster himself.
Yeah, we had a session earlier today on just the importance of learning even just general customer service. It doesn't matter if that's where you end up, but having that customer, like that experience, dealing with sales and customer service, it's a skill that no matter where you are, internal, external, that it really lends itself. And I have to say, when you said the word Beamsville, so I lived in that area for a number of years, and I was remembering some of the wineries that we would go to, just the small ones, right? So I was going back in my mind there. I lived in Winona, technically just a little outside, but it's a great area for sure. We have one more question I was going to ask from Olga. So Olga, I don't know if you want to ask it yourself, but I can read it for you. Many of the beers have truly amazing backstories. Do all of your beers have such an interesting story behind them? And she was remembering event back in the day in summer of 2020 where Josh told the story about the paper salesman beer, and how that was beautiful and touching, a tie back to his father. So are there stories, is there a story behind a beer that you want to share with us that particularly hits with you?
I think in general, when it comes to, they mostly relate to the naming of the beers. Paper Salesman was definitely a nod to Josh's dad and his family history, and it was an extremely personal thing for him, which was amazing to see. And it is one of our best beers, in my opinion. So I think it does right by his memory. For me personally, I think the thing I absolutely love the most is how much we care about the quality of what's inside the can. The names are cool, and I have fun with the names, and there are some that stand out as being like super fun and witty. But for me, it comes down to like things like the Shape of Home that we're drinking right now, or beers like Two Flags, or one of my favorites that we do regularly now is called Trouble in the Fields, where we work with a local corn farmer called Against the Grain, where their main goal is to bring back heritage grains from the region and highlight grains that have been kind of extinct just from commercial farming practices, and working on bringing those back. So we work with them to use some of their heritage corn in our beer to create, just a beautiful corn lager, something we call the Laurentian adjunct lager. And I think that's the part that really sticks to me, is the attention to the ingredients that go into every beer, to every can, but more specifically the ones that really reflect the place that we live and the ingredients that come from nearby. We have a whole barrel program at the brewery. All of our limited bottle releases that we do, that all use 100% local ingredients in all of the beers, and we use wild yeast to ferment them to create just very unique beers, very, very unique beers that are truly representative of everything that is around here, right down to the types of yeast that are in the air to help the fermentation go. But yeah, that to me is the standout part of the beers, and the names are fun. But I mentioned earlier that I see so many different beer names go through the brewery that I tend to forget a lot of them. So I think I referenced a couple of them that I really like. Alouette's probably one of my favorite ones, as far as like the nod to the first Canadian satellite and kind of like the nod to Canadian science and tech, which is super fun.
Very, very cool. So I'm just gonna open it up. Anybody else have any more questions? Just leave it. You can come off mute and ask a question to Pat, but I'll give you a couple of seconds here if you want to ask. If not, I will wrap it all up. Anybody got a last question? Going.
I have a question, but it's
There we
unrelated to beer. Pat,
Okay.
I was wondering if there's a story behind the artwork that's behind you, because it's
Yeah, there is. Actually, Claudia might be better answered than that. They're asking about a background of the art. She's actually sitting right next to me here.
Want to say hi?
Yeah, I don't know. They're not really hear them, but they can hear you talk, I think.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a textile artist. It's an embroidered piece. I have a show coming up at City Hall. If we can physically be in it, hopefully we can pretty soon. But April 29th, I'll be in an exhibition with Guillermo Trejo and Marissa Galamet, two other fantastic artists. And the show is called Manila Acapulco, which references, speaking of like funny names that have very deep references in history, that was a trade route for over 200 years between Manila and Acapulco, which is Acapulco is where I'm from, and the other artists are also from Mexico and the Philippines. So it's all about kind of triangulation of heritage. Thanks.
It's very cool. Thanks for the cameo. We appreciate it. I was picturing her
I get
trying to hold
watch
the
her do
cat
her
back.
stuff all the time.
'Cause
No,
usually
the
we
cat's
have-
kind of wandering around.
The cats usually sort of crawl up and try to get themselves in the screen.
Yeah,
So
my
anyways,
cat's
Pat-
a little more timid, so she likes to just kind of sulk around a little bit.
Sulk
Oh, speaking of
around.
which, there she is. Janice, she's good.
Janice, I love that name. That's her next beer, Janice.
Yeah.
I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And thanks again to Pat for all of your knowledge and sharing your beer and all the stories. It's so incredible. Again, this just the importance of the last year of being local and staying local and living local. I think there are no silver linings, let's face it. But if there is one, I think it's really highlighted whether you're in the charitable sector or in the restaurant business or the beer business, just really that emphasis on the stories behind things and how important it is to stay local. I also wanted to just do a quick shout out to our program sponsor, Tech Savvy. Without them, they're a great partner of ours. These types of programs wouldn't be possible. And obviously as well for Dominion City for always being there for us and for sharing the love of our local community with us. So we are done. GenNext Amplify, our 2-day launch event is over, and we hope everybody enjoyed themselves with the sessions. And just a quick reminder, make sure you sign up for a newsletter. You can sign up at our website, gennextdo.ca. It's in the Get Involved section. There's a subscription there, so make sure you sign up and you can keep up to speed on all the news as well as anything coming up with Dominion City as well. I did want to shout out, I know, Pat, you have an amazing social media channels, and I think there's a particular group on Facebook that if you join, you'll get I think there's a special following group on Facebook that you can join to get
the Loyalist League.
There we go, the Loyalist
Yeah.
League. I was trying to get there because I am a member. So make sure you sign up for that as well. That's it. Thank you, everybody. I'm sorry, I was scrolling down. I thought there might be something else.
Thanks
I
so
want
much,
everybody
everyone. I
to
really
stay
appreciate
safe
it.
and thank you, Pat. And I really, really, really appreciate, Pat, you joining us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So
Thanks
really,
for
really
asking.
appreciate it. All right. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Bye, everyone.